Welcome, everybody, to the February Lunch with NEMA. I'm glad you guys are able to make it today. It's the last day of February, and it's gorgeous out here in Arlington. My name's Heather Riggs. I am Director of Administration here at the New England Museum Association and kind of the voice of Lunch with NEMA. So to get you guys started, if you are new to Lunch with NEMA, how we're going to be interacting with each other is through the chat feature. So if you have any questions throughout the entire presentation, go ahead and type them in the chat feature. To get us going, if you guys want to tell me where you guys are actually calling in from, that would be awesome, so we can see who's on the call today. Yay, Springfield. It looks like there's going to be a large group from Springfield today. I wonder
Welcome,
why.
friends.
Great. So as you guys are getting going here, we're going to be talking about the give and take in multi-generational mentorship with Nicole and Jenni from the Springfield Museum. So a little bit about Nicole. She has worked at the Springfield Museums for quite a while now. She is currently the course coordinator for museum schools. And Jenni Powers, she was actually a NEMA fellow, so she wrote a couple articles for us for the journal, and she is currently running the day-to-day operations of the Art Discovery Center. I also want to say thank you to them because last week was school vacation week, so they were super busy with that, and on Saturday they also have the Dr. Seuss birthday party. So I'm going to turn it over. I should also mention that today's session is being recorded and will be available on the NEMA website later on this afternoon. So Jenni and Nicole, I will let you guys introduce yourselves and take it from here.
Good afternoon. This is Jenni, and I'm the Family Engagement Coordinator at Springfield Museums. I was Art Discovery Center Coordinator when I was the NEMA Fellow, and I still do that as part of my job. But I was a lifelong museum lover. I grew up going to museums. I never imagined it as a career for myself. But then I did fall into education. I was doing a lot of non-traditional education activities, and I was doing some classroom teaching. And when a job for museum educator opened up, I thought, well, this will combine two great loves in my life. So I decided to go for that. I've been promoted a couple times, so I do run all the giant family program events that we host here at the museum. Last year we had a week of dinosaurs and dragons, and like Heather said, this coming Saturday will be our gigantic, spectacular, fabulous, you should definitely come to our Dr. Seuss birthday party. It's our first time having this party since the Amazing World of Dr. Seuss Museum opened last year.
And I'm Nicole. I actually got my start at the Springfield Museums as Jenni's intern back in May 2014, right after graduating college. And just a few months after interning with Jenni, I was able to get a part-time position here. And since then, I've gotten a couple full-time positions as well. So I've kind of moved around a bit. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is what is a mentor. So the way Jenni and I are defining what a mentor is for the purposes of this webinar is a mentor is an individual from whom you can learn and seek support, and this relationship can be either formal or informal. We do want to note that a lot of what we're talking about today comes from our own personal experiences, so not all of our examples may be universal, but we hope that they're helpful to you regardless. So we are going to be talking about three main age groups. We have clumped them together in terms of what we thought made the most sense from our examples. So we are talking about three main age groups. The first is emerging professionals, which are usually the ages of 16 to 27, career changers, who are usually the ages 27 to 55, and seasoned professionals, who are usually ages 55 plus. For each group, we are going to be discussing the common challenges that face each group, the common challenges that arise when we work with them, what we can provide for them, and what we can gain from them.
All right, so we decided to start with our youngest age group, which is we decided to call emerging professionals. For me, I consider myself mid-career, while Nicole considers herself, I think, still an emerging professional. So here at the museum, we have a strong internship program. And the people that we have in the internship program generally tend to be in this age range. We'll take people in grades 11th grade and up. So one thing I just want to touch on is how do we measure the success of our of our mentorships. And for this age group, I would say if they decide to move on to a job in the museum field, I feel really excited about that. If they feel excited to move on to a job that is related but not specifically museums, I still feel pretty excited about that. We can tell anecdotes where we've had people's parents come up and say thank you for teaching them something that they never would have tried before, things like that are a little more anecdotal, but we want everyone to feel that their time was worthwhile. That's a big measure of success. And then basically not having a failure is also really important. And I tried to think of how I would define a failure, and I said, if I have to ask someone to leave, then we have failed. So some of the challenges that we came up with that are facing emerging professionals is that a lot of them are working toward finishing school. I get a lot of people who are seniors. A senior year seems to be the hardest year. They may be applying to grad school. They may be job seeking, they may have a big move ahead of them, and they're trying to balance that along with an internship. Some schools may be getting credit, and in some cases they may not be. This might be outside of their schoolwork. Being able to balance something like an internship with part-time jobs, with second jobs, with writing papers, and then a lot of the people that we get may even have children already. And so to be able to balance working, children, all of those things together can be a huge challenge.
I know in my own personal experience, when I started as Jenni's intern, I was balancing just a part-time job and an internship. And then when I moved on to a part-time museum educator position, I was at one point balancing up to 3 jobs. So that was definitely true for me.
So another challenge that I see a lot is the seeking full-time employment in their field after graduating. I feel this is something that people come in with a lot of really unrealistic expectations about. I have had interns tell me, no, as soon as I leave here, I need to make $40,000 a year, and we have them expect that they'll be able to move out of their parents' house immediately and that they'll be working in some amazing position. Even our extraordinary director of museum education here at the museum took 5 years to get a full-time job in the field. And so if someone like that takes that long, we know that for a lot of us, I think most of the people here started part-time. And then finding direction, finding what exact direction. Even within the museum field, we know there's so many different opportunities. So finding that direction once they've left also.
Again, from my own experience, I came into my internship knowing that I wanted to work with kids in an educational setting, but I wasn't sure where to go or what approach I should take. So taking this internship with Jenni, I was able to kind of solidify that, yes, the museum education field was really right for me.
So part of this career development is not just them looking for a full-time job that they want in their field, but making sure that we're guiding them into something that's really appropriate for them. There's a big gap between people who want to be public-facing and people who want to be behind the scenes. I've met a couple people who were so extraordinarily personable and friendly and warm, but they wanted to be hidden away in an archive, and then nothing wrong with being hidden away in an archive, but it's sometimes helping these people find the best fit.
Yeah, again, when I did my internship with Jenni, I didn't really know anything about museum education, so it was really great to have that experience and see, oh, I didn't know I could do this at a museum. So that internship gave me the firsthand experience, which not only gave me the experience to get a job, but also just helped me kind of figure out this is what I wanted to do.
So some of the challenges that we have faced when working with emerging professionals is they do have all these other priorities in their life, and there may be times when we're counting on them that they may decide that something else has to be top priority, something like school commitments, and it may be, their school commitments may be something they need to graduate. So even though they may put us in a bad spot, obviously that needs to come first for them. We've definitely had some people who prioritize social commitments over school or internship responsibilities, especially when they were involved in some really robust clubs on their campus. I have had quite a challenge with people who are really kind of falling out of the internship, and they have, I don't mean to say this in a negative way, but they come in with a lot of sob stories. Well, we all have personal challenges. Some of them have seemed really exaggerated as an excuse to not do the job. And this is not to malign young people at all. We would never be able to do what we do without them. And so that's just one experience from my life that we've used. Some of them may have scheduling changes that are outside of their control from semester to semester or with their jobs or things like that. Another thing that we faced is they may want to work extra so that they get extra work experience, but there's not always enough work for them to do. So for instance, here at Springfield Museums, we usually ask people to work 1 to 2 days a week. Beyond that, if they're just sitting there with another intern who's actively working and there's not enough work for both, they're going to be bored. That's a negative experience that moves us into the failure category. We don't want that. So it's wonderful to be able to offer them as much time as possible, but we try to keep the requirement for time here very low, so balancing that can be tricky. Also, something we've seen is that the experience they're seeking may not match the level of commitment that they're demonstrating. And so we really love to give them a full experience as possible, but they have to prove their level of commitment in order to get there. Like I said, the expectations about being able to graduate and get a full-time job seem very high, and we would love for that to happen for them, but we know that they may have to work several part-time jobs before they get a full-time job. They also have come in with some unrealistic salary expectations. I think that everyone will get a laugh out of this, that one of my interns said, oh, at a mid-sized museum in a non-metropolitan area, I would expect that a curator would make about $120,000 a year. And Nicole, I think, was in the room when they said this. We both laughed them almost out of the museum that would be the salary that they would make. And we actually connected them with some people in our area who told them a reasonable salary expectation would be more about $40,000 a year. $80,000 a year difference is pretty huge. So as far as what we can provide them, Nicole, we can go to the next slide. We can provide practical work experience. That's the number one thing I think we can give to emerging professionals. And whether it's the field is new to them and familiar, or whether they've never been to a museum before, they may get to work in a different department or that they've never worked in, or a different facet of that. I try to include the opportunity for emerging professionals to sit in on meetings with me or attend webinars just like this one, to do other visits to other museums, the chance to mingle with other museum professionals. Of course, we give them recommendations. That's one of the most important things we can give them. Try to give them a greater awareness of the museum field. I was really proud the year that I was the fellow, one of my interns ended up being the recipient of the diversity scholarship. So in that case, it was just sitting with them, going over the different scholarships that were available and which ones they would qualify for. She got to go to the conference. She was one of the youngest people there, but it really helped solidify that she wanted to be in the museum field. We can also sometimes give behind the scenes looks at the museum, even if it's not directly about the internship, and sometimes they get to do something extraordinary and new. Last year, we had so many people interested, so much press interest in the Dr. Seuss birthday party that one of the interns actually ended up being interviewed for a news segment, which I think is very above and beyond what I would expect. But that was a case where her parents came in and said thank you, that she would never have gone on the news if we hadn't really needed that. So. Let's see. We also have the opportunity to model appropriate workplace behavior. I did offer a gift to an intern once, and the intern used some rather colorful expletives to thank me for it. I had to let him know that was not really appropriate. We also have the opportunity to, if a emerging professional is interested in being forward-facing to work on the social skills that they may need. I, at one time, had someone who would just say, there's an art project over there if you want it, whereas instead of saying, welcome, we're glad you're here. Would you be interested in participating in an art activity today? I put this picture up because one thing that's really important to me is knowing the people that we're mentoring, and these people in this picture had worked for us for a couple of weeks. They were great, but what they were ready to do was pass out candy at a Halloween party. And in the next picture, the person I was working with was ready to dissect some flowers in the lab during our Festival of Flowers. However, there's a big difference between trusting a emerging professional to pass out candy and to work with knives with children. And even in that case, I felt I had to say, you know, when we start, we always start with knife safety. Knowing that not everybody has had the same teaching experience, it's important that they really understand all those different steps. Something else that we have the ability to provide for these emerging professionals is a safe and accepting learning environment. We find that we do have a fairly diverse internship pool, people from all different backgrounds, and we have a lot of LGBTQ plus people that we work with. So we try to create a welcoming space for them. Like if we have ally flags over our desks, or we have posters in different languages, even if we don't speak those languages. I have one that says, I dream of a feminist future in Spanish, so I hope that at least they'll see their language when they walk in the door, even if they don't hear it from me. We also have been pretty successful doing some peer-to-peer mentorships within the internship program. I had the same young person who I had to say, no, we have to say more than the art projects over there. I paired him at first with someone who was kind of bringing him down. Then I moved him and paired him with a person I found to be really dynamic, upbeat, ready to work individual who was just a little bit older than him, and he did really well with that.
And even beyond the internship, as a museum educator, I was often paired with other more experienced educators when I was learning our programs. And this helped me to not only learn the programs, but to also learn the different ways to teach the programs, because each person has different tips and tricks. And it was really helpful to see what worked and what didn't.
Can we stop and ask if there are any questions so far?
Sure. If anybody has any questions, go ahead and type them in the chat feature there.
Come on, Springfield Museums, hook us up.
It's a shy group today. That's okay.
Another one of my former interns seems to be in the audience also. So, by the way, once you have been an intern at Springfield Museums, I will take credit for your career the rest of your life. So we can move on then to what we can talk about oh, I'm sorry, I skipped the whole section. What can we gain from emerging professionals? So many different things. So one thing that is really, really important to me is the diversity of perspectives and ideas. Obviously, as they're still in school, they're coming in, they're learning new things and bringing them here. They're bringing their own ideas in. Just the diversity of ideas is super important. My favorite word at the museum is relevance, the chance to be able to pay attention to the things that these younger people, for me, younger people, what they're saying and doing, and the chance to stay relevant for their generation is so, so important. I hear people bash millennials all the time. To me, millennials are such an exciting group of people that we have so much to learn from that I really love having them here.
I can say I've personally helped Jenni with this as well. There is an age gap between us, and so we're from the different generations. So whenever she's brainstorming with ideas, I can run and be like, well, that might be relevant for some of the family, but what if we take it a step further? We can make it relevant for the entire family.
So they're also offering us the chance to grow our workforce and to have a talented group of people to choose from when we have an open position. If the possibility is them working with us, we want to make sure that we're really giving them what they need because we are going to get so much back. They also remind us that we need to keep changing, learning, adapting. I've also, on a personal level, gotten the chance to learn more about diversity and social justice. I have worked, like I mentioned, with the LGBTQ plus community, who has really taught me a lot of different things that I didn't understand before as a cisgender straight person, and that has been only helpful to me. And I also get to learn a lot of other new cultural things, like I got to learn what a movie pass is. I get to invited to go to these hole-in-the-wall gallery shows with these young artists. And I also got to learn what Springfield was. It's a great place to get late night wings. So now we will move to career changers. So some of the challenges facing career changers, that I would put myself in this category. I came to the museums in my late 30s. So I was kind of changing direction from a more traditional education setting to a new, different, non-traditional education setting. So needing to discern what they want to get out of their career change. I think a lot of people career change are coming out of either a really frustrating experience or an experience that felt really unsuccessful to them. They might lack the confidence that they need to move on, and something that we can gain by having these career changers here is, or something that they can gain, is we can help them feel more successful going on. One intern that was a peer of mine, a peer age-wise, really needed to learn how jobs are usually divided up in museums. Even though every place is different, he was someone that wanted to work deep in archives. He ended up going to work at a men's homeless shelter after this. So even though he didn't go into the field, I would still consider it a successful experience because of the discernment. There are very few people that don't come in with something that is relevant to a museum experience. Here we're multidisciplinary, so we can take someone from almost any background and they will bring something to us. The unrealistic expectation that I mentioned before is a little different for this group because they may have been a higher earner in their previous job, whereas if they change jobs, they're going to have to start in at the entry level again, and not everybody really wants to accept this. So some challenges that I have had working with people who are career changers is I find it a little harder to have that peer-to-peer conversation about what they need to change when it's someone who, for instance, we had someone who had a PhD, and I do not have a PhD, and I felt a little intimidated to have to tell him that he needed to change the way he was speaking. They sometimes need a little more help identifying the obstacles that are in their way, because the obstacles that are in their way may have been the same in their previous position, like for instance that level of professionalism. Sometimes it's a consistency that they need to work on. For this group of people, I would say the work-life balance is the most challenging of the three age groups, because a lot of this time, it's peak time when people often have families, and that can be a hard time to manage kids, work, internships, or volunteering or working. And then it can be hard to mentor someone who is as qualified or more qualified than you are, and we've definitely run into that. What can we provide for career changers? We can provide, again, that relevant experience, that discernment. They may not know anything about a new field. They may still be deciding, or they may have committed. We have had people who volunteered here who then fell in love with education and decided not to go into the museum field, but to go into teaching. So we can also offer them good connections for networking and opportunities. And with this age group, I tend to be a little more cautious about networking than I do with the emerging group, just for those same reasons, is that I want to make sure we're helping point them in the right direction. I don't want them to feel like they're flailing at this point in their life. I want them to feel like they're ready to move forward. So what we can gain from working with career changers, again, diversity of knowledge, especially if they come from a field, almost anything. There's no wrong knowledge to bring to a museum. We need it all. the chance to pay attention to their generation and have the ability to stay relevant to their group. They might have very different needs than our first group of emerging professionals. So I'd just like to touch on here someone who I consider a mentor for me in the museum field. When I was a museum educator, I was primarily teaching science programs, and I looked to someone who is just a little bit older than me, but who runs the art and history programs here at the museum. She is a wonderful, creative, amazing person, but this wasn't a formal relationship. This was an informal mentorship where I looked to her as an example of someone I would like to do a job like that and do it as beautifully as she does. So the things I especially learned from her is, so she runs our docent pool. She is extremely respectful of the docent's time. That's something that's such a high priority for her. That's something I learned through watching her. She really knows how to finesse knowledge both in and out of volunteers. A lot of our docents come in with things they want to teach that aren't necessarily in line with the program we need to teach, but she brings out the best in them in both ways. That was something that just watching her do that with that, everyone felt good. I wanted to be able to work with people like that. And then she's just so creative, and she uses her creative ideas in everything she does. So that really helped me see that I would like to have the opportunity to work with volunteers, to be able to use my creative ideas in a bigger way. All right, then speaking of docents, then we're getting into some of our seasoned professionals that we work with. They have some different challenges than perhaps some of the earlier groups. They have a greater chance to have family obligations. They may have children, they may have spouses, they may have aging parents that rely on them, they may have grandchildren. They may have health issues, including mobility issues. And again, that's just our experience, but those are things that we know people have faced here at Springfield Museums. Some challenges we have when we are working with them. They may have priorities that we have to work around and that are different than you might expect. For instance, I have an amazing volunteer right now who, if it starts thundering, she needs to go home. She has a dog that needs to be outside if it is thundering, and there is no way for me to necessarily stop a program unless it's outside if it's thundering. So we are, for instance, we already are planning this summer to have an outdoor task so that if we expect thunder, that would be canceled, and then we'd be able to accommodate her needs. In my experience, people who are in the seasoned professional area are more likely to be set in their ways and want things a certain way. I think we all fall into the, well, we used to do it this way kind of thinking, and I'm not saying that's bad, but it is something that sometimes can be a challenge at times. Another thing is that we really want to be respectful to these people because they are our elders and we appreciate everything they do, but that doesn't mean that there aren't concerns that would still need to be addressed. It's just a little harder for a mid-career person to have that career with a seasoned person. What we can provide to them is a little different as well. We can provide social interaction. I know at Springfield Museums, our docent pool is a huge place for making wonderful friends. We've had people just stumble upon a docent tour, decide they were interested, and then make some of their best friends they've ever had. We can help people have a sense of purpose after they may have retired so that they have that loss of that job, but as a volunteer, they may be able to take on a whole new set of projects. We can provide continued learning opportunities as an educational setting. I think all museums are. Museums are a natural place to learn new things. Whether you're a visitor, whether you're staff, whether you're an intern, we all have things to learn. This is such an important group for us to work with, to learn from. The diversity of work and personal experience is often huge. The experience that they bring in is so, so helpful. We often can gain specific knowledge on different topics, whether it be someone who has terminal degrees or someone who's really well traveled or who worked in a field for a specific time. We have a woman who's a docent here who traveled to Africa multiple times and actually built schools. Since we have an Africa Hall that contains both culture and animals, that's super important for us. Staying relevant to this age group is something else, just like the first two. It's so important that we stay relevant to all these different generations, and so the ability to pay attention to them, to learn from them, and help us stay relevant is super important. It also gives us a chance to look at accessibility in different ways. For people with mobility problems, we might think about, well, how accessible is our museum? Where is our parking? Those are all issues that might not be brought up by an emerging group that is definitely going to be brought up by the seasoned group. So I think Nicole and I want to go into what makes a good and a bad mentorship a little bit. I think we all may have horror stories about bad mentors. So just going over a little bit of what makes a good mentor, having a clear idea of what you need your mentee to do and how much time it will take them to accomplish, if you are assigning tasks, this is, how much time it will take to accomplish a task instead of just guessing and then them ending up having too much time just sitting around. No one wants to be using their time to just sit around. Assigning meaningful projects instead of just tedious ones. We all know that sometimes we need interns to do some more tedious projects, but having an objective or a goal and a strategy, really thinking about these things and working toward them.
I know in my experience when I was an Art Discovery Center intern, Jenni definitely provided me with a good balance of prep work, hands-on experience, and creative thinking. So while on one hand she did make me cut out what seemed like an endless amount of shapes for art activities, she also had me brainstorm for an art activity and help me shape my idea.
And actually, Nicole never actually finished her project because she got hired in a job too quickly, which that I will call a success as well. So there are times that we have interns die cutting for hours for a big program, but then hopefully they get to be facilitating what they worked on, or they get to be developing something new at the same time. So a good mentor is also someone who shapes and fosters ideas instead of squashing them, who makes introductions and networking connections instead of hiding their intern away or their other mentee away. A good mentor is someone who will introduce the environment beside their own specific spot, so maybe other museum staff, maybe the opportunity to see museum theory, what the work culture is like in their area, maybe introducing them to seminars, other formal learning opportunities and resources.
Although Jenni's no longer my supervisor, we still work very closely together, and she still, even today, will encourage me to take advantage of professional development opportunities that I may otherwise be too intimidated by. So, like for instance, a couple of years ago, she encouraged me to go to the NEMA conference, and it was a wonderful experience.
I kind of insisted on taking her to the NEMA conference, and I invited her to do a Lunch with NEMA webinar with me. So even today, we're still working together. Looking at what the mentee's strengths are is another important part of being a good mentor. Customizing the experience, trying not to fit everyone into the same box. Giving honest feedback is one of the things that I find to be the most difficult, but dishonest, bad feedback, or no feedback is one of the worst things we can do to someone that we're mentoring.
I definitely agree on that. When I was in the in-between stage where I was an intern but applying to be the museum educator part-time position, Jenni went over my resume, and I was so thankful that she was just giving me actual criticism and telling me how to improve it, and my resume is stronger because of it.
So a good mentor is also open to differences instead of shying away from those differences. Working with diverse interns will only have a positive impact on the diversity of your institution, especially for visitors, members, and future interns. Another thing that a good mentor does is tries to keep relevant with what today's standards are instead of holding them to standards of yesteryear. This is something that Nicole is probably tired of hearing about, but when I first met her, she had a nose ring, and I just thought I would never go to an interview with a nose ring, and I just thought she was really cool. But now it is completely acceptable to have piercings. What has changed is for workplace appropriate is different. Tattoos, different wild hair colors, those things are all completely normal now, and we love them, but that is really different. So being mindful and having positive views toward the generation behind you, having a positive view toward every generation is obviously extremely important, but some people seem to get stuck in a little rut about that. If someone is working with you, someone you're mentoring will need their own workspace instead of being shoved in a corner. They'll need the proper tools to succeed, whether that be a desk, a table, a computer, a phone. A good mentor also encourages reflection on their work and how it reflects their goals. And then I just want to make note that not all mentor or mentee relationships are balanced. Sometimes you are giving without getting, and sometimes you are getting without giving. This is not necessarily a bad thing. I want to talk a little bit about my current mentor, who I'm really looking up to, and seeking a mentor. The most important thing to do is to look for gaps in your own experience, what will make you a stronger worker. So I found that I felt I had a really good museum background and a really good creative background and really good working with families, but when I went up to my current position, now I have staff. And where I have holes is that I don't have any management experience other than working with staff is wildly different than working with interns. And so I really needed to find someone who I could learn management theory from and who I could run scenarios by and would give me honest feedback. I'm really lucky I was able to find someone. She's not actually in the museum field. She is outside of the museum field, but almost everything that she says to me is 100% relevant. So I just looked for someone that a family member was actually talking about this person and how dynamic she was, and I just emailed her and said, would you help me with a few questions? And she said yes, so I've been really lucky. So looking for that missing skill set, it doesn't have to be the same field. A job that you are interested in, whether it's at your institution or not. It doesn't necessarily need to be a formal relationship. And observing how another person does their job. There's actually someone, I believe, with us who I really look up to, who is Courtney from the Eric Carle Museum. I really look to her at the different kinds of programs she does, and whenever I get to talk to her, I love to take some ideas away. So that's another informal mentorship situation. That picture is Laura, who I mentioned earlier, who is the wonderful person who does the art and history docent programs. And then the person on the right was an intern here who actually replaced me in one of my jobs for a little while. Our last slide is a picture of Tracy Jordan from 30 Rock. That's a show that Nicole and I love to discuss at length. So we are ready for questions.
So if people, if they're coming up with any questions there, do you find either the formal or informal type mentorship, just like you talked about the negatives and positives and stuff like that, because we're here at NEMA trying to look at mentorship too, and we're trying to figure out, it's like, okay, should it be more informal, more formal, things like that.
Nicole can speak to this if she wants to, but I find that I really get more out of an informal relationship. I have a hard time asking people to commit their time towards something that may not be directly benefiting them. So if I can find someone that I have the chance to observe and maybe have lunch with once in a while, but not have to ask them to do more than they want to do. So for me, I just feel more comfortable looking at an informal mentorship.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And do you actually tell them that they are a mentor, or do you just kind of have this, working relationship with them that you discuss things with and, bounce ideas off of, and not actually have to label it?
Oh, both. It depends who it is and the level of commitment. So for my management mentor, I needed her to know that she wasn't someone I could just watch from afar, unlike, say, Courtney or Laura, who I could just say, ooh, let me look at their brochures and see what they're doing and get as much FaceTime with them as I can. I can kind of sneak that in there. This person, in order to have any time with her, I need to have a more formal relationship. And she's also someone I might share a more sensitive situation with, and so I want it to be someone that knows what the purpose of this conversation is.
Okay, so we do have a question from Matt. Does a museum use set mentoring goals for new learners so that each intern is getting the same baseline of information when they start?
I'm going to say no to that because we try to have them set their own goals. Each one comes in with something different that they want to get out of the experience, and customizing that is something that I feel really strongly about. So they're always going to get the tour of the museum. They're always going to have to know certain tasks that we need them to do. But beyond that, the number of interns that we work with, we couldn't give them as full and rich experience that we'd like to if we don't customize. I see we have another question. Oh, Matt, do you have any follow-up question, or are you good? Did I answer that? Okay, great. So I saw we had a question from Laura. Also, are your interns paid? Our interns here at Springfield Museums are not paid. And that is one of the reasons that I am proud we are able to offer a very part-time program so that they are able to balance work, family, school, all of those things. Because when we're not paying them, we need to take a little less of their time, I say. I should say this internship existed before me. I did not make that decision.
No, I mean, that's always a tough subject.
Yes.
So.
I don't mean about the paying part. I just meant about it being a part-time internship. In our department, there have never been full-time interns.
Now, does your internship program also include like college credit if they are in college, or do you leave it
yes.
up to the student coming in?
They have to tell us, every school, we have so many colleges in Western Massachusetts. We have the whole 5-college area. Then we have, I think, 3 or 4 colleges more in Springfield itself. So they have to bring what the requirements are to us. I'm happy to fill out their paperwork, but I can't memorize them for every school we work with.
Okay, so Matt has another question. Is there time dedicated to teaching certain staff how to be mentors, and how do you decide who will move into a mentoring role?
When you're hired into a position here at the museum, you know whether you're going to need to be a mentor or not. That's built into the position. So when I was hired as Art Discovery Center Coordinator, I knew I would have to mentor interns. When my coworker Laura was hired to be the docent, working with docents, she knew she would have to be a mentor. I hope that that's taken into account during the interview process. I have not personally hired for a position like that, and it's been so long I don't remember what the questions were. But I think that the Director of Education would take something like that into consideration before she would hire us. Some of us have a background mentoring in other situations. I do have a background working with youth and teenagers and mentoring them. But as far as directly how to work with mentors, no, that's not something that we offer.
And then Scarlett asked, how do you encourage other departments to take on mentees? Say you're finding someone that is in your internship program that might be better suited to maybe another department in the museum?
I usually ask that they finish an internship with me before they go on to a different department because I want to be able to refer them thoroughly. I won't refer someone to a different department who I've only known for 16 or 32 hours because I want to feel that other departments take a recommendation from me seriously. So at that point, I have recommended people for both jobs and for other internships. At that point, I would email the head of that department and say, hey, I have someone really special here. I think you're going to want to know this person, whether for a job or for a volunteer opportunity, and make a direct introduction.
Okay, Liz actually brings up a good question. I was wondering myself.
Okay.
Is every intern that you accept mentored? It seems as if the two words are being used interchangeably. My follow-up question kind of on that one, too, is that it seems like mentored is also, in addition to being the supervisor, that you're also being a mentor. So I was kind of wondering about that one, too.
So if you're doing an internship, I think that's a big part of the desire to do it is to be mentored. So I would say yes, that every intern who comes through the museum is mentored to some degree, where some people will ask for more than others. Yes, an intern is. I'm sorry that I'm using them interchangeably. That's because that's my primary experience. It's not that they are interchangeable. I consider myself a mentor to some of the museum educators that we've had at the museum, and I consider myself, I am not an intern, and yet I am someone who is being mentored now.
Okay. Liz is typing there. Great, thanks. So Andrea asked,
thank you, Liz.
Emerging professional in a formal mentoring relationship, how can I make sure that this experience is worthwhile for my mentor as well?
Ooh, that is a really good question. I would like some ideas on that.
I think it is any type of relationship like this is definitely a give and take. It's just like I've had mentors in the past, and I've been mentors to other people, and it's definitely, a learning experience too. It's just like, what can I learn from them? It's like, yes, they're like learning from me, but in the long run too, it's just like I am learning from them because they're coming at it with a different angle, a different question, different thought pattern of how things happen and stuff like that. So, I mean, it's definitely a give and take. It's more or less also making sure that you're checking in on how they're doing professionally. So, I think it's more definitely give and take on that one. In other words, give something back as you're getting information from them and helping
right.
them.
I think offering to help with projects is a wonderful way to do it. And I'll tell you, one of the things that I most appreciate from people I've had as mentees, whether as interns or in other roles, is if they keep in touch, if they follow up even years later, if one of them emails me and tells me what they're up to. That is such a rewarding thing to just know that you had a positive impact on someone's life. So that's a long-term something to do, but really important to me. The mentorship that I'm in now with my management mentor is really one-sided. She gets almost nothing from me. I can't offer to help her with projects, and so she is really doing it just as a great person.
You do sometimes buy her lunch, so that sweetens the deal.
Oh yes, I have. That would be about it.
Do we have any more follow-up questions there? Liz says, I think we do it for the joy of seeing great people succeed.
That is exactly the truth. I get to be facilitating a webinar with a great person right now. So nothing could be better than that.
Yep. So is there any last-minute questions here? Now is the time to ask them.
Or if anybody wanted to share a story of a great mentor that they had that we could learn from, we would love that too.
That would be a long essay.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're going to wrap up then. If you guys are good with questions and stuff like that, I do appreciate everybody chiming in here, and also Jenni and Nicole for taking time out of their very busy schedule for the past 2 weeks. So I do appreciate that quite a bit. And then just as a reminder that the next lunch with NEMA will be, we will be talking to IMLS about grants. I know everybody likes to talk about money. And then also a reminder that today is our deadline for conference proposals. Maybe a mentorship type session proposal would be awesome. We always are encouraging those types of things. That'd be great. Jenni, Nicole, do you have any last-minute words that you would like to share?
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you so much.
I always like that. All right, so we are going to wrap this up, and just as a reminder that today's session was recorded and will be available on the NEMA website along with prior lunch with NEMA. So if you ever miss one, go ahead and take a look at our website. We have a lot of great resources there, and so I just want to thank everybody, and we will see you next month. Thanks.
Thank
Bye.
you.